of all, thank you very much. I think the forum that we all just attended was a very interesting one, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I understand some of you may have questions, and so I'm happy to respond. Katie.
Hi, Minister Blair. Katie Simpson, CBC News. Something that you did not mention at the talk that you just, or the Q&A session you just did, I'm curious, did you discuss at all the situation in the Middle East with Secretary Austin and the U.S. threat to stop sending weapons to Israel if Israel does go ahead with an offensive in Rafah? And what is Canada's position on that U.S. threat?
Well, first of all, of course, Secretary Austin and I spoke about a number of threats that are happening around the world. We did talk about the situation in the Middle East. We talked about the Israel-Gaza situation, but also in the Red Sea and the threat that the Houthi are bringing to international trade and waterways in the region. We did have discussions about the situation in Israel. Canada's position, I think, has been well articulated and clear. We support Israel's right to exist and to defend itself as a nation. We condemn the terrorist attack committed by Hamas. We call for the release of hostages, but we have also expressed our very strong concern, as have the United States, about the impact on innocent civilian lives in the conflict in Gaza, and our ongoing concern about innocent civilians in the Rafah area of Gaza. And we both strongly believe and support that we should find a way to increase humanitarian aid and help those innocent civilians get to a place of safety.
Yes, but on this specific new proposal by the United States, does Canada support the United States if it stops supplying weapons to Israel, if Israel does go ahead with an offensive in Rafah?
Well, again, I have great respect for the United States making its own determinations on that. I can also share with you that Canada has also expressed our concern about the loss of life among innocent civilians in that conflict. We have our own very rigorous regime for the export of all military equipment to every country, and since the beginning of this year, Canada has not issued any new export permits for military equipment to Israel. We are also watching very carefully as the conflict continues there to ensure compliance with our very rigorous export regime before we resume any future assistance to Israel.
If there are no other reporters, I'll ask more questions. Does anyone else want to? Okay, I'll ask a couple more if that's okay. Has American pressure on Canada to increase defense spending, has that had any sort of influence on how you make the decisions about what Canada is going to be putting towards defense spending?
Listen, all of our allies, including, of course, the United States, but certainly our NATO allies, I've met with them very many times. We've talked about our shared obligations to global peace, to deterrence of potential adversaries, and also with the United States, many conversations about our shared responsibility to continental defense and security. Certainly in those conversations, I've asked for the Secretary's help because I want to make sure that we make the right investments and we get the best value for those investments for Canadian taxpayers in developing greater capability in our nation's defense, but also in fulfilling our obligations to our allies at NATO, NORAD, and now in the Indo-Pacific. And so that help has always been forthcoming. It's quite frankly, Katie, it's a really valued partnership. I really feel that I'm receiving remarkable support from our allies, and we also acknowledge to them Canada must and will do more.
And did I hear correctly during your Q&A session that if Canada does go ahead with purchasing a new submarine fleet, that you are confident that with that purchase, Canada will finally meet the 2% of GDP spending?
I believe we have got a number of investments which we've identified must be made. I've got a responsibility to do the work to make sure that when we spend Canadian taxpayer dollars, we're doing it well and we're creating the best possible value for those investments. But we are going to need a new underwater surveillance capability, i.e. submarines. We're also going to have to make some other very significant investments to replace our tank fleet, for example, to build out that integrated air and missile defense system that is required here in North America. I'm very confident that those investments, when we've done the preliminary work of identifying what's required to meet our armed forces' requirements, and also explored what's available to enable us to acquire those capabilities, then I'll bring that information forward to my government. Canada recognizes, first of all, I think through our new defense policy update, we're doing a great deal more on defense. But we acknowledge that even beyond these announcements and what has already been fully funded in our defense policy update, there's more to do. I've got more work to do to bring that information forward to the government and to the Canadian people, but I am confident that Canada will do what is required.
And I'll do one more. If no one just checking, I'll go. Oh, there are. Oh, okay. Other people want to go. Sorry. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Vanessa Montalbano with Inside Defense. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about Canada's perspective on China's ability and the timeline of that to infiltrate the North American airspace.
Well, first of all, Canada is absolutely committed to upholding the international rules-based order that has kept our country and the globe safe for over 80 years. We have seen in our efforts with our allies, for example, transiting through certain waterways, that has elicited a bit of a challenge from China, but we believe very strongly, it's not our intention to be provocative, but we believe very strongly in standing up for the principle of free navigation of those international waterways. We've also seen some other adversarial actions in the cyber front and even on surveillance and data collection by China, that their interests are not always consistent or compatible with our national interests, and I will make sure that we clearly communicate that and we stand up for those international principles and rules that have in fact kept us all safe.
And just one follow-up, what might the offensive or defensive reaction be if a Chinese aircraft, say, does enter North American, the area of interest, the North American airspace?
I think that our response needs to be well coordinated with our allies and also proportional for whatever threat presents itself. I don't want to speculate too much on a hypothetical, but I also think that standing up for that principle of the integrity and sovereignty of our borders also requires that we have the capability to put action behind our words. And you know, I think ultimately the best way to resolve those matters peacefully is through diplomatic channels, and we're absolutely committed to do that. But as well, we need to be well prepared, no matter who challenges our sovereignty, that we are prepared to stand and defend it.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. Chris Gordon, Air and Space Force Magazine. You just discussed gaining the capability to ensure a nation doesn't encroach in the airspace, but does that suggest you don't have that capability now, or it's lacking?
No, it needs to be stronger. We have domain awareness capabilities in the high Arctic right now that we share with our NATO partner, the United States. But we know we need to make greater investment in over-the-horizon radar so that we will have stronger situational awareness, but also enable us to respond appropriately to any threat that may manifest itself. We also have a fleet of fighter jets, but we are replacing them with a greater capability. There are other investments we're making in our submarine surveillance fleet, the Poseidon P-8s. That will bring us very much in alignment with our allies, but also create a capability. I currently have deployed a number of C-140 aircraft. Our crews do an exceptional job there. But it's time to move into the next generation of those planes and capabilities, because the threat environment is becoming more complex, and we have to meet the moment and answer that challenge.
There was a lot spoken of domain awareness gaps when we had the balloon incidents. Have those been closed satisfactorily?
The balloon incident, I think, was a good wake-up call for all of us, that we needed to do more. It really put a lot of energy behind NORAD modernization, for example, because we saw the limitation of our existing domain awareness assets. And at the same time, I think it also showed the strength of our alliance through NORAD, because we work seamlessly together with the United States as that passed over Canadian territory and into the United States. And so I think there are lessons to be learned on that. They're being well synthesized by NORAD Command, and we also recognize some of the investments we are committed to making are in many ways justified by the concerns raised by that particular incident and a number of other things as well.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Can I ask one more quick one for Murray Brewster back in Ottawa? Sorry. What was Lloyd Austin's response to your conversation today? Is the United States satisfied with what Canada is doing in terms of its new military investments?
I would not presume to speak for Secretary of Defense Austin, but certainly as he's communicated to me, he is very encouraged by the very significant new investments Canada is making in defense. I think he agrees with our focus in particular on continental defense and our commitment to NORAD. And at the same time, I hope that he was also encouraged by my assurances that Canada has more to do and that we will do more to support the alliance and to reach our commitment of 2% of GDP.
Thank you very much, everyone.